What is up, chat? Happy Mushoku Mondays, everybody. Welcome back to yet another Trek Mushoku Tensei Jobless Reincarnation novel series. We're on a journey of 2 lifetimes, part 5. Part 5. Somebody pointed out how many parts we've done of this, and I'm like, yeah, I wasn't really expecting to do this much either because of how much of it was like just, like that much of it was all like the timeline and everything, but it is what it is. It's a very busy time right now, but we're getting through it. We're almost done with this one. I think we're probably going to have this part and one more part, but it has been a fun little journey in here. A lot of really good stories in here, but at the same time, they're getting really, really short. And I think half of the stories are all the funeral. At some point, I'm doing my, like, kind of, breakdown, just breaking it down a little bit. I'm not doing, like, too much because of how busy I am right now. But at some point, I'm like, at the funeral also, this character, because every single one of these short stories opens up with, at the funeral, everybody brought something for Paul. And it's like, I don't need to keep saying that. So I'm just going to say at the funeral, blah, brought. But yeah, they're getting shorter. Some of them are very interesting this time around that I'm excited to kind of dive into, but we're getting there. Again, I think we're probably going to have this one and one more, and then we'll go on to redundancy. I don't know. Well, I will see, because I thought I was going to go to redundancy before this part, and they're like, no, you got to do this one first because there's stories in it that is required for redundancy. And I'm like, okay, we'll see. But yes, as per usual, hey chat, thank you for dropping by for the premiere. Hope you guys are doing well. Hope you guys have a great rest of your Monday after Mushoku Monday. But yes, I greatly appreciate your guys' kind words. All of your support helps me get through this entire journey through Mushoku Tensei. I was going to say Mushoku Monday. This entire journey through Mushoku Tensei. But yes, greatly appreciate everybody that supports the channel monetarily through Patreon, tips, links, super thanks, memberships, all that stuff. It means a great deal to me. Last week we had Rose Moist with a membership and a super. Thank you so much, Rose Moist, for your ongoing support. It means a lot to me. Nathaniel with the 12 months, hit that year mark. Thank you. And Silver with the super. Thank you. You guys are so amazing. But with that said, let's just dive into it. Short story, a swordsman only goes sober once. Like I said before, haven't broke these down too much just because of how busy I've been, so I apologize for that, but better than not doing a Mushoku Monday is really what it comes down to. At Paul's funeral, everyone brought something that carried a memory of him to the feast. Roxy brought a bottle of imported beer. Back then, I was Rudy's private tutor. Paul didn't drink much. Roxy began to tell a story of when Rudius was little. It was his 5th birthday. These days, it's common enough knowledge not needing an explanation, but humans had a custom of treating birthdays that were multiples of 5 special. Rudius' 5th birthday was no exception. The family all got presents and put all their energy into celebrating. Roxy gave Rudius a staff. Again, a wand. This is the second time in this one where they call a wand a staff. You're different, actually, it's a wand. Sounds so stupid. Shut up, Andrew. Now, Edis got him a staff through one thing or another that was now in Sylphie's possession. Yeah, that's kind of a surprising thing, honestly. The fact that that was in Sylphie's possession, and I think it was brought up one time before, but the fact that something that Roxy gave Rudius he was willing to give up is kind of surprising. Rudius is not a firm believer, confirmed. He's not a true believer. That day, the Grey Rat household threw a small party. Roxy was allowed to join the festivities. She felt grateful to them for treating her like family. It was that night that it happened. Roxy awoke in the middle of the night, sensing something wrong. Her long career as an adventurer meant that even when she slept in a soft bed, she could awaken in an instant to any noise. Well, that was a lie. She had been sound asleep and just happened to wake up in time to hear the faint noise. It sounded as though someone was moving around the corridor. A burglar? Thanks to Paul's efforts in Buena, the village, by and large, was a safe place where people were kind to outsiders. But there was always people who'd fall victim to temptation. If such a person were to break in somewhere, naturally would be the house with the most money. Because Paul was the resident knight, they were the most well-off family of the village. For goodness sake. She's like, damn it, I gotta go kill somebody real quick. Hold on. Roxy got out of bed, staff at ready, and went down the corridor on tiptoes. After the family had done so much for her, the least she could do was throw the intruder out quietly, as to not disturb them. Deciding that, Roxy went down the stairs towards the source of the noise. The noise was coming from the kitchen. She peeked inside and saw someone with their head inside the cupboard. Apparently, they were scrounging for food. No one in the Oster Kingdom had too little to eat. The land was so fertile that you could find a number of edible leaves and fruit at the side of the road. Porky Lane. Porky Lane. She was too stuck on the idea of following the laws of man. She was too stuck on the idea of do not go against the laws of man. So as she's walking down the road and she sees like a tree with fruits on it, she would assume that's probably the ownership of the people that live there. That's probably what, even though she ate the bug could have been ownership to somebody. That being said, a person living in the village might look to other people's larders first. In any case, if it was for food, not money, she could talk them around. Are you hungry? The figure jumped, then slowly drew its head from the cupboard. Oh, it's just you, Roxy. There, a guilty look on his face was Paul. Huh? Paul, what are you doing here in the middle of the night? Nothing really. Paul tried to hide the item that he had found, overtly avoiding her gaze. But Roxy managed to catch the glimpse of the bottle of alcohol. You're drinking so late at night? This is, He quickly hid the bottle behind his back. Roxy was puzzled. It wasn't as though alcohol was forbidden in the house. And Paul had been drinking at the birthday party too. What's wrong? Look, since Rudy was born, I've been trying not to overdo it with drinking. I don't want people to see me making a fool of myself drunk, you know? Especially Rudy. I can understand that, I suppose. But in the end, it's not enough, you know? Like, sometimes you just want to get off your face drunk. Or, do you see what I mean? Rudy's already 5, right? And it was only just the other day he was born. Roxy didn't like alcohol very much. What is he talking about? What? It's funny because as I'm reading that, all I could think about was the anime adaptation where he's just freaking going crazy and acting like a dork and eating the sword and everything like that. Yeah, totally not face drunk. Roxy didn't like alcohol very much. Most of it was bitter, and she always ended up drunk straight away. A little bit of a lightweight. I can see her totally being a little lightweight. I think the only reason that she got really drunk back there with Kishirika was because it was sweet, if I remember correctly. But she understood wanting to cut loose at a party, especially if you're always restraining yourself. I'm not this type. I really don't like drinking. I don't find it to be a good thing. There's a side of me that almost hates the idea of almost forcing yourself to loosen up. That's always been sort of the oddity for me. And I don't like the idea of something making me different than I normally am. I mean, the whole idea is to force you to cut loose, to take down those barriers, but I don't like that. I don't like lack of control of myself. Yes, I understand. You're doing me a favor, but don't tell Zenith, all right? She'd be pissed for sure if she knew I was getting jumped by myself. I won't, but in exchange. Damn, my mind went down a really dark in exchange. That day, as a condition, I'm not going to say anything, and that day, as a condition of keeping a secret, Roxy asked Paul if she might join him in bed. I'm joking. Asked Paul if she might join him for a drink. He told me to keep it a secret, but it doesn't matter anymore, does it? Like, suddenly out of nowhere, Zenith just suddenly snaps to it, like, she becomes completely cured out of nowhere and just starts getting pissed off and cussing up a storm. Everybody's looking at Zenith. Zenith, you're okay. What happened? She's suddenly restored because she's so pissed at his funeral to find out that he was drinking all night. Mom, calm down. It's okay. Zenith. Anyways, Roxy then downed the last cup of beer. Usually she found alcohol bitter and unappetizing, but she remembered how, on that day, it tasted unbelievably good. Again, this still hurts, even though it's Roxy's perspective, or at least Roxy's story, because she loved that family so much. Again, this is a family that brought her in and treated her as one of their own. And she stayed there for a long time, tutoring Rudius, and they just kind of welcomed her in. She was a part of the family. More so emphasized in Volume 12 when she's trying to connect to Rudius in that loss. She's trying to tell him, I'm kind of there at your side feeling the same pain you are. It's not the same, but a similar pain to you are. This idea that this was a family to me too, and I feel like I've lost a family member as well. Again, nowhere near to the pain that he should be going through. Obviously, Rudius is sort of dealing with something very complex at that time, but trying to relate in some way because there's that connection. So I can definitely see her in this moment, sort of seeing that moment. Yeah, I went out there and we drank together. We were all alone. We just sat there and drank together. It was just time to kind of connect between the two of them. So it hurts. It's still definitely a gut punch. A short story, how the swordsman and the thief used their money. This is kind of funny, tie into the story earlier. At the funeral, Geese brought several medals. Again, I need to check to see if it's in episode 1. I don't think it is. There was a time he got into collecting these things, you know? Geese began to tell a story from after Zenith joined the Fangs of the Black Wolf. At the time, with the addition as Zenith as a healer, all was going well for them. After traversing a number of labyrinths, their finances were looking good too. Perhaps because of this, Paul got into collecting odd medals. As he said it, they were medals that were awarded to knights and countries that had fallen into ruin before the Laplace War. Geese couldn't see why these things should be sold at a high price, but as part of his profession, he frequented the places that they were traded, so Paul often dragged him along to hunt for medals. That day, Geese and Paul were at an auction house. Paul's hands were clenched around a bag of 50 millis silver coins. He had saved up for this. It was a veritable fortune for the likes of an adventurer.
Oi, Paul, it's time.
Yeah, I'm a bit nervous. Up for auction was the final type of medal for Paul's collection. Upon catching wind of this, the two of them had come to the auction house, which they did not usually visit. He had never bid on an auction before. Feeling like a fish out of water, Paul broke out in a cold sweat. All right, then. Our next item is an Anchor Kingdom Knights Captain medal, starting at 10 silver. At last, the item appeared. 10. Paul quickly raised his card and said the price. Anchor King Knights medals weren't all that popular amongst collectors, to say nothing of ordinary people. Only serious medal fanatics would want it. Paul thought with a bit of luck, he'd get it for around 20 silver. 25. Still, someone raised the bid. Apparently, there was a serious medal fanatic here. 30. 35. 40. 45. The voice called out confidently, perhaps hearing the reluctance in Paul's voice, smelling victory. Paul's voice caught in his throat. His budget was 50 silver, but this was in fact the entirety of his current assets. He assumed that he can get it for 40 coins at most, because according to his research, that was the market rate. He had brought 50 just in case, but if he spent it all, he'd be going hungry until he earned another bounty. 45. I hear 45. Can I get a higher offer? Paul looked at the auctioneer in anguish. Did he choose the medal or not? An hour later, Paul staggered down the street. I mean, we all know the answer to this. we already got spoiled to this a long time ago. It never happened. That was the whole point of the whole story. In the end, he hadn't bought the medal. That is to say, he tried. He called out for 50, but then immediately was outbid.
Yeah, you should have borrowed from me if it meant that much to you.
Geese had thrown him a lifeline, offering to lend him 10 silver. I'm surprised Geese has anything to offer. I think that's the biggest plot twist of this entire story, is that Geese actually has money to offer him. And yeah, that's also... Geese is a type of person that I don't think I would ever want to have to lend money to, or I would want to lend money to, like somebody that you owe money to, because with how much he gambles, he would probably use that against you at some point. You never want to let you have some money, that kind of thing. Paul considered it for a second, but decided not. Just 10 wouldn't been enough.
Yeah, you can't know without trying it.
Nah, I could tell. That type doesn't fold. Swordsman's instincts. Paul spoke like a man who accepted defeat, but he still hadn't quite let it go.
How come you're collecting those medals anyways?
He knew a guy didn't need a reason for collecting things, so he hadn't questioned it until now. But he found himself wanting to ask. Paul looked away, face flushing a little. It's Zenith. The other day, we were at the antique dealer, and she was all, "Look at this medal, it's so cool." So, it was a present for Zenith. Geese let out a heartfelt sigh.
Well, in the end, he took my advice, and bought a pretty chain. Then got all the medals that he bought up until then remade into one pendant, and he got Zenith to like him better. So, good for Paul, eh? And that was that.
Geese had heard the metal pendant that he got was lost in the displacement incident, but antique dealers were always hawking them. He thought it could be a bit of fun collecting medals once things had settled down. Paul hadn't been able to complete his collection the day that he had visited the auction, so Geese would do it for him. As Geese finished his story, he thought that might not be a bad idea. Don't make me like Geese for Fujin. You for Fujin, don't make me like Geese. It's kind of a what-if scenario. I think that's kind of a sweet what-if scenario. Again, the story, we already know the answer to this. In that whole last chapter, not the last chapter, but the chapter of this before, it literally talked about getting the medals together. They went to an auction. He failed to get the last one. He gave up and gave her what he had. So we already knew this was all going to play out this way, but at least kind of shows that, at least in this alternate kind of timeline, there could have been a possibility that things settle down and then Geese goes out and gets all the medals for Zenith, question mark? He says get him for him, but I would assume the idea there is to get them together and give them to Zenith because Paul wanted to do that for her. I don't know. It's cute. It's cute. Again, it does display the fact that despite following what the man God wanted him to do and going against Rudius, he did like Paul a lot. It is interesting to think about the fact that if Paul was still alive, there's a side of me that believes that he wouldn't have turned against Rudius. Even if the man God told him to go against Rudius, I don't think he would have. There's almost a side of me that believes that the man God wanted Paul to die. in case he ever needed geese. Because again, he didn't want geese to have really anything. There's so much emphasis on the fact that the reason why he's able to control geese is because geese doesn't have anything. Literally doesn't have anything. Let's move on to the short story, The Reader and the Elven Warrior. At the funeral, Elise brought a book. That Paul, underneath it all, he was quite the reader, wasn't he? She began a story of when she and Paul had first formed the party. That morning, when Elise went to the dining hall to eat breakfast, she found a young man there. It was Paul. Elise was a little bit surprised at the sight of him. He was lodging there, so it wasn't strange for him to be there. What surprised her was the open book in front of him. It was rare for adventurers, especially warriors and swordsmen, to read books. Almost none of them studied. Quest postings and contracts at the guild were written in letters, so there weren't many that couldn't read at all, but almost none of them read for pleasure. This was because books themselves were expensive. Yep, pretty much like usual with these kind of setups. What a rare sight. But you know you won't attract any ladies just by opening a book and making yourself look intellectual. She assumed it was for show, that Paul was trying to look cool to get girls. I mean, yeah, it seems like it kind of puts that this is sort of common knowledge that you can rent these books, so it's not like you're, rich. At the same time, do adventurer girls really care about smarty boys? Say what? I'm not reading because I want to attract girls. She seemed to be wrong there. Paul was actually reading. Did you buy that book? Don't be stupid. I borrowed it. The world's paper-making technology was relatively advanced, but bookbinding and printing was still developing. Handwritten books were the norm, and they fetched high prices. They weren't something ordinary commoners would buy on a whim. To cater to commoners who wanted to read, there was lenders. Basically, it was a book rental industry. That's actually interesting to read there, because, again, with the whole situation with Rudius and the book for Reserve, it seemed to imply the idea that there was a little bit of element here of, yes, part of it was a fear of distributing the book because it was painting a demon in a positive light, so the Mills Church wouldn't like it. But I seem to remember at that time they were also implying the idea of not many people being well-read, or that books were very hard to come by, and thus a lot of education and whatnot was bad. This doesn't mean that education is good enough to have lenders. There could still be a lot of people that don't rent the books because they're not smart enough to read them, but it does kind of paint that there is at least the availability of books, which was kind of a surprise to me. But it could be very, very expensive even for commoners. Like, not that it's expensive, but for commoners, it's too much even still. Wow, what sort of story is this one? Nothing, just adventure stories. The book Paul had borrowed was a collection of adventurers' tales. That being said, the stories were just accounts of the experiences and mistakes of adventurers who had happened to be around, so a lot of them were anticlimactic or ended badly. Such stories were popular with commoners with no connections to adventurers, though. Back when Paul was the heir of the noble family, he snuck out to find these sorts of books. Yeah, again, something that Paul Guide didn't really kind of emphasize at all, the idea that he was seeking to become an adventurer. It didn't seem like, at least from Paul Guide, and again, not technically being Refugian that wrote it, seemed to more put that he wanted to become an adventurer after his whole situation with the dojo and then banging an adventurer. I want to become an adventurer because I banged an adventurer and they're pretty good in bed. But yeah, I can see that totally being a thing. Again, with a lot of people. Shoot, Cliff. It's like a Paul connection to Cliff moment here. I can see a lot of kids having that desire to become adventurers. Like, it's that dream of going out and slaying down dragons. Even though we adventure every day. These are great, aren't they? Elise then spotted the landlady. Could I trouble you for some breakfast? After ordering soup and bread, she sat down at the table, resting her chin on her hand and watching Paul read. Oh, whoa there. Don't do that. Paul was entertaining as he read. His muttering to himself followed what was written on the pages, while his face went a whole range of expressions. Paul had always had an expressive face, but Elise couldn't help but smile at the thought that the book could even bring this out of him. Elise slipped out a laugh, making Paul look up. Oh, pardon me. I was only curious about what was written in there. That's all. Right. He must have known that she was covering up the fact that she was laughing. But apparently, Paul was more preoccupied by something else. It's a shocker of a story. How so? How? Well, first off, all the characters are morons. I forgot how this ends. I know the punchline on this one. The story he was reading was about 6 adventurers who went into a labyrinth and through a small mistake ended up in a tight spot until one of them used their wits to escape. It was a story pattern you often found in these tales. Their one fault was that you never quite was sure if it was true or made up. But because, as a rule, they had happy endings, their popularity endured. And then the swordsman, who's our leader, says, we gotta just keep going. Well, it's a valid option. No, it isn't. I knew when I read this bit that later they'd run short on supplies and end up screwed. And what do you think happened?
they ran out of supplies and find themselves at the creek without a paddle. Wow. As she listened, Annalise had a strange sense of deja vu. She thought that pressing on would be a valid option, but at the same time, she had for some reason had an idea that they could run out of supplies and be up the creek without a paddle. Then their magician says, if we go up this hole, we can escape. And he tries to climb up, right? But his belly gets stuck. After that, they kept botching things up and got into worse situations. Each time, Annalise, since the deja vu intensified, she was sure she'd never heard the story before, yet for some reason, it felt like she had. Then, at the end, the healer does something clever, and they escape with the skin of their teeth. Then, everyone lives happily ever after. That's the story. Annalise paused. It's a common story, isn't it? Yeah, probably. But, somehow, reading this story just made my blood boil. Like, surely you could have done something before it got that bad. Or, I don't know. Yes, I suppose so. Annalise agreed with Paul. She, too, felt irritation at the story she couldn't put words into. If I was there, I would have done it better. Paul vigorously scratched at his head before closing the book. Oh. Annalise just realized why she had deja vu. That story. Isn't that what happened to us when we went down to Yoshmat Labyrinth a year ago? It clicked for Paul as well. 1 year earlier, yes, back when their party had only just gotten together, and they were all new to the Labyrinth exploring game, Fangs the Black Wolf had, without making proper preparations, gone into the Yoshmat Labyrinth, and they got their asses handed to them, barely making it out alive. The characters in the story had different names, different classes, and the order of mistakes different, but it was definitely that adventure. If I were there, I would have done it better. She's such a troll. She's such a troll. After she repeated back what he had growled earlier, he looked away, face going red. Me now, I mean. Let's say that, shall we? Annalise let out a laugh. Immediately after, Paul and the others had escaped the labyrinth. Another party of adventurers had cleared and destroyed it. Because of this, Paul had totally forgotten, but Annalise remembered what Paul had said after their escape. Next time, I'll do it better. Annalise let out a little chuckle as the thought that even a year later, Paul was saying the exact same things. That was cute. That was cute. That was cute. The question mark is who wrote the book? Who wrote the book? Now it says this is back when they first formed their party, but not Fangs the Black Wolf. 1 year earlier, yes, back when the party had only just gotten together, and they were still all new to the Labyrinth exploring. I mean, they could have been Fangs Black Wolf. Yeah, the Fangs Black Wolf, without making reparations, gone into the Labyrinth. So this has to be them. This isn't them with some other extra dude that ends up writing it. So that implies that Talhand or Geese? Definitely not Ghislaine. Definitely not Ghislaine. Talhand or Geese? One of the two of them wrote it. Because Annalise doesn't know. Paul doesn't know. Ghislaine can't. I mean, Ghislaine can. Let's be honest. It could be Geese. Geese told somebody, bragging to somebody, and somebody wrote it up. Now, Geese, whenever he tells his story, he always tells some great thing about how he did something to save everybody. He takes the credit for how it finishes. Again, like the whole thing with when he went to Millis and he was bragging to some people about like the whole teleportation labyrinth, how he found the secret chamber. Yeah, sure did. It's got to be Geese told somebody and then somebody wrote it. Short story, the swordsman and the dwarf have a drinking contest. At the funeral, the magician Talhan brought a bottle.
The scoundrel never knew his place when he was young.
He began to tell the story from when he and Paul had first formed their party. Is it true that all dwarves can't hold their drink? During their after-quest celebration, Paul asked the question. He was probably just curious.
What do you mean?
Dwarves can hold the drink. It's one of those things everyone says, but you don't drink that much, right? It just struck me as odd. Talhan didn't drink much for the simple reason that he was broke. People thought all magicians needed was a staff, but in fact, the occupation was a real money guzzler. He always had to have scrolls and magic crystals at the ready for branches of magic that he didn't specialize in. And in Talhan's case, he also needed armor and a magic axe for close combat. He never had any cash to spare. Yeah, I guess it's technically an interesting perspective because we always get a perspective of Rudius, who is, yeah, by all accounts, very talented.
In the perspective of all of the mages, he's insanely OP and has a lot of potential there. That's not really the case for everybody, especially somebody like Talhan. Yeah, because he's so short and he can't move fast, he needs armor to protect himself. He can't just dodge out of the way or something like that. He's not very fast. So he needs that armor, and he needs a weapon for close combat. And he's not like Rudius, where he has like this massive mana pool and all these different abilities. I mean, there's also the side of it that Rudius isn't always like massively prepared. He kind of doesn't take a lot of things seriously as he could have. Talhan takes it very seriously. So he's making sure he has scrolls and gems for all sorts of situations. He's being overly prepared for everything to be able to cover for any sort of situation. So yes, it's very expensive for a normal mage. For a normal mage, it's very expensive.
I don't have that money to waste.
Really? You sure it's not because you're actually a lightweight? Damn, dude. In fact, Paul's jibe wasn't far from the mark. Dwarves love to drink alcohol, the same ways that humans needed water to stay alive. But it was true that Talhan didn't like his drinks as much as other dwarves. That's a surprise. I thought he was pretty equal. If he had water and alcohol placed in front of him, he'd choose the alcohol. But unlike the others, he didn't love it so much that he couldn't go a day without a drink. He's got some self-control, that's cool. He was content to go without when he couldn't afford it, despite all that.
How about we find out?
Oh yeah?
We just finished that quest, so I got the money. Best way to see if I'm a lightweight is to test it yourself. Wouldn't you say? Oi, master, we need drinks.
Talhan ordered drinks that were brought to the table. A drinking contest, eh? I like it. Paul licked his lips. He was always up for a competition, no matter what it was. Even ones that he had no hope of winning. Elise and Geese, who had been having their own conversation off to the side, now looked over.
What's this? If you're having a drinking contest, might I join too?
You ain't got a hope in hell against a dwarf by yourself. I'll lend a hand.
Huh, I'll take any number of you. Won't change anything.
Talhan drained his first tankard, looking at the other three, thinking that he'd have a good laugh at them once he'd drunk them out of the table. An hour passed.
Hey, Talhan, you dumb bastard. How come even though magicians wear robes, you got all that heavy armor on, huh? Bit weird, isn't it?
I imagine the armorer saw a wet behind the ear dwarf and thought, here's an easy mark.
This here's a robe made from strong steel plate. Perfect for magicians or something.
Paul, Elise, and Geese were all well truly off their faces. Unlike dwarves, they had no resistance to alcohol, and so it only taken a mere dozen or so drinks. Talhan, meanwhile, watched them all with his usual sullen expression, quietly sipping his drink.
Just so. That old armorer was so senile. When I said I wanted a robe, he brought me a full suit of armor. Then on top of it all, he said that he'd throw in an axe.
No such luck. Talhan was as red in the face as the others, coughing as he drank heartily from a keg cradled under one arm. He was completely sloshed. An axe? That shopkeeper judged you entirely by your looks, didn't he?
But I felt bad, so I bought it all. And what you know, it came in handy. And I've been wearing the armor since then.
So the old armor was right after all. That day, Talhan laughed and drank a great deal. He kept them all entertained with lies and made up stories he rarely told, and drank until he fell over. He just bullshitting them the entire time.
That's when I got called the one-axe mage.
It was as though there was never a drinking contest. Drink never tasted so good before.
It was a puzzle to me back then. Why did it taste so good? How come getting drunk felt so good? I mean, we were drinking watered-down cheap stuff.
As he thought back to that night, Talhan raised the bottle that he had brought to his mouth and took a deep swig.
Thinking about it now, this answer's simple. It's not the quality of the drink that makes a good night of drinking. It's who you drink with.
He grinned around at all of them, his face bright red. Dude's drunk at the funeral. Dude's drunk at the funeral. Again, another cute one. Another cute one. Another cute one. Actually, this story is more about him getting drunk with the party than really about Paul. Paul just asked if he could get drunk. Paul just asked if he liked to drink. It's not even about Paul. It's about him getting drunk with the party. Like, can you get better stories about Paul? Like, everybody at the funeral is like, what about Paul? Do you anything you want to talk to us about Paul? Yeah, yes, if I can get drunk. Oh, this is the Lilia one. This one got me a little emotional when I read it earlier. It was breaking it down. Short story, the knight's attendant's first job. At the funeral, Lilia brought a cake made with dried fruit. She wouldn't explain why she brought the one food Paul hated. It wasn't a story for other people's ears. You hated this cake, didn't you? She thought. Recalling something that had happened not long after she became the maid of the Grey Rat household, Lilia made a cake on the day that Rudius was born. While they planned to hold a proper celebration later, she thought a cake would be a nice way to enjoy a happy occasion in the meantime. That night, Paul ate dinner alone. A son, eh? He hardly cries. Don't know what that's about, but a son. He started drinking, muttering, a son, a son, a son, over and over, grinning. He was over the moon at Rudius' birth. Ah. He took a swig, then frowned at the sight of cake. And this is? It's to celebrate Master Rudius' birthday. Right. Paul poked at the slice of cake with his fork, but didn't take a bite. Instead, he went on sipping his drink. Perhaps he didn't like it. If so, perhaps she had done a bad thing. Why'd you become our maid, anyway? Why, sir? Yeah, I want to know why. The reason. Didn't I explain it when you first hired me? No, I get your situation. But you didn't have to come to this house, did you? Well, I don't know. At the time, she had been at risk of being assassinated for political reasons. As such, she needed the least noticeable place where she could find someone who could protect her. Finding such a place was hard enough. Finding such a person was near impossible. First of all, there was no one who would shelter her once discovering that servants of the Austrian royal family were after her. Paul, though, he owed Lilia a debt. She thought if she played her cards right, there was a good chance that he would protect her, even if assassins came for her. Interesting. I don't think they ever implied this. What they laid out in Volume 1 was that, yes, she was looking for a place to get away. That, yes, they were coming after her. That was established. They want her dead because she was there for an assassination attempt that was thwarted. But, yeah, some people are going to want her to disappear. The idea that an assassination attempt happened or that she possibly could help them tie it back to whoever did it, all those things are in play. They want her gone. So, yeah, her getting away from there was established. But her specifically choosing a place for somebody that would protect her, that was never established before. Which kind of is, it feels kind of nasty, the fact that she's going to a household where a child is about to be born. And she's going there to hide away from assassins. Is like, it implies the idea that she went there knowing full well that assassins could come for her and that she'd want Paul to protect her. That part of it sounds nasty. But in the end, if you have no choice, you have no choice. She's trying to get away from danger. And yeah, that's the place that she could find possibly protection. In the end, she has nowhere else to go. That's a choice. If anything, I was wondering why you were willing to hire me. Well, there's hardly anyone who would come to a backwater like this. Paul fell silent for a moment and looked at Lilia. I mean, that's part of it, but also, when I saw your name, I thought, there's something I need to say to her. Only, I was worried you might not like me dredging up the past, so I never managed to. This is interesting. This is actually interesting. Again, I don't recall him ever implying... I mean, yes, he knew who Lilia was. Again, he literally told Rudius about what happened. Like, it was established there. But we're finally getting a moment where it actually shows that he talked to her about this. What? What? This is a conversation that happened at some point? When Paul said the past, Lilia remembered her first time. A far greater number of terrible things happened afterwards, while she was a guard maid at the Austria Palace. So the impact had faded, but she couldn't forget it, and it was not a good memory. This again sucks, because again, yes, they did establish that before. The fact that after that happened with Paul, she wouldn't be around men. So the father sent her somewhere where she could have a life, like a job and everything, work at the royal palace. And yes, the sad thing that happened there was that she was forced upon there, and she claimed that during the act, she thought that this was better. That there was this unfortunate thought process that went into her head that there it was better. It was much better with him. Despite the fact that he forced himself upon her, it's happening again here, and it was better there. It's like that whole, again, sucks, sucks. But I hate the fact that at some point it implied the idea that at some point in the course of it, she found something good in it. In the act of it, she found something good in it. And even from his perspective in the Paul Gaiden chapter, it implied the idea that it seemed like she was liking it at some point. I hate that. I hate that. I hate it so much. But here it's saying it was not a good memory. Despite the fact that afterwards, terrible things happened afterwards, because of the horrible things that happened at the Austrian Palace, there was a greater number of things that happened there, that the impact of what Paul did to her faded. But she couldn't forget that moment together. And it was not a good memory. I like that. I like the fact that she acknowledges that that wasn't a good thing. Because I hate the idea of accepting that that was an okay thing. It wasn't a good thing. It was a terrible experience still in the end. So their coming together is literally, you wronged me, and now I want to wrong you back so you can protect me. But today, well, with my kid being born, I made up my mind. What I did back then was wrong. I know an apology isn't going to make it right, but I hope you'll forgive me. Right here, realizing, finally, I f***ed up. I mean, he did back then too. He's, oh my, f***ed up. Oh man, woo, I did something wrong. Better get out of here. But here at least, I become a father. I've been trying to change. I mean, I think it was before then. I think it was when he was with the Fangs of the Black Wolf. At some point, again, with Zenith, I want to grow up. I want to get better. But right here, it's like I finally have a child that has come into this world that I want to protect and raise and be a good father. I'm going to be a father. And then you come showing up, and I see that past where I messed up bad, and I want to make it right. It's easy for somebody from a third party to say what they would think in the situation. No. Based on what was all going through his head at the time, it's hard to really say that I would forgive him. But I would want him to naturally prove it. Do things. Can't forgive you, but I'm going to open the door and say, go change something. Go fix something. Go build something. Do something. I'm going to allow you to move forward, but do something. But I'm not going to forgive you. Do something. Prove it to me. Lilia was shocked. The Paul she knew was a rascal through and through. The sort who did things without thinking twice. Who thought he was better than anyone else in the world. That was why, when Lilia had applied for the job, she had planned on using the past as a bargaining chip. Yeah. Again, from her perspective, the boy at the dojo was a... He was full of himself. Hated everybody. Looked down on everybody. Took what he wanted without even thinking. Now he was married, she thought. He wouldn't want to expose this to his wife. He played dirty, so she had meant to do the same. Yeah, I think Zenith knew who he was. Again, Zenith was with him in the band. She knew he was a womanizer. This isn't a secret to Zenith. That's why, again, when the whole situation happened with Lilia and Paul, and Rudius was trying to go to try to help Paul out by talking to Zenith, yeah, I knew it. She knew it. She knew that Rudius was lying. She knew her husband, knew what she was getting into, knew what she signed up for. Honestly, I think she's more surprised that it took him that long. Oh, and yet, after his sudden apology, Lilia was at a loss for what to say. It wasn't a question of whether to forgive him. For her, what happened was water under the bridge. In which case, if she considered her future, the correct response will be to tell him it didn't bother her. Interesting response there. Again, right here, she's done with it. Like, it happened so long ago, and good for her. In that situation like that, good for her to have the strength to move on like that. I know it's not the same for a lot of people. For her ability to be strong enough to kind of walk away from something like that and say, you know, what happened. I'm moving on from it. I moved on from it a long time ago with everything else that I've gone through. But right there's odd. If she were to consider her future, the correct response would be to tell him it didn't bother her. I guess the idea there is that if she wants to stay here comfortably as a maid, say it didn't bother her so that they can commingle in this house. You would think that she would think if she wanted to consider her future, it would be to respond, then do right and protect me. And then I'll forgive you. Use it. Bargaining chip. But I think she's wanting to move to commingling because of what she says. I want to have peace in this house. All right. Then please eat that whole cake. Yes, ma'am. That would be yes, ma'am. If you can get away for what you did, yes, ma'am. The words were out of her mouth before she realized it. Paul looked a little taken back, but then nodded slowly and began eating. He's like, yeah, you shove that shit in your mouth and you eat it. He definitely didn't like it. In fact, he must have hated it because he retched and choked a few times as he ate. But even as tears leaked from the corner of his eyes, he ate the whole thing without spitting anything out. When she thought back on it, Lilia wasn't sure why she said what she did. But she did know one thing. That had been the moment that she truly forgave him. And the moment she had fallen in love with him. Interesting. First things first, before I forget, wasn't it Aisha that hated this same cake? Somebody hated this cake. Somebody, if I remember correctly, did not like this cake. I think it was Aisha. Because they had a party at some point, and one of them was not liking it. And they had to kind of force it. I think it was, I think it was Roxy that had to like push her Maybe it was Norn. I have to look back. Either way, it's one of those things of like, yeah, this is totally a nod to that, like father, like daughter moment right here that obviously Refugion's going for. Because Lilia likes making this damn cake, and there's only going to be somebody in the household that doesn't like it. But interesting right here, because again, it sucks because from volume 1, which is most of our perspective of the romance really when there's stability, yes, there's stuff later on with like, you know, Lilia being reunited with Paul, her staying at Paul's side that entire time. There's a sense here that this girl is sticking at the side. But I honestly felt like throughout the entire mainline series, I never really got a sense of love with Lilia and Paul. Yes, I think there is obviously love there because they end up staying together for so long. But I always felt like because there was nothing really shown in volume 1 besides the fact that she was sexually attracted to him, and at some point her urges and desires to have some of that after hearing it for so long, her female desire for something led her to luring him into the room. But I always had like a sense of it being a sexual attractiveness there, an urge is there, but her love for the family was more prevalent. And her desire to seek redemption for what she did to Zenith was what kept her there. And then over time, through all of what they go through with the displacement incident, she forms a bond with Paul. I joke about it before, but I literally do mean it. I've always had a feeling of it's not so much that she loves Paul, is that she loves the family, and that is through the actions of what happens with her and Zenith, and her desire to seek redemption with Zenith. That's why I always joked about the idea of the wives. I always felt that Lilia was more in love with Zenith. The idea that their bond together was the strongest. It was through her desire to seek redemption that she loved Zenith. I wronged the lady who trusted me. She brought me in that house and she trusted me with her family, and I broke that trust. I nearly destroyed that family, and I want to undo that wrong. And then they become the wives with Paul. And Paul's there. I really did feel like she loves Zenith so much. Everybody loves Zenith. But here finally getting some semblance of, yeah, something happened back there. He f***ed up. He ruined my life. I was sent off to the palace, and they did horrible things to me. I was nearly killed at some point. Then I needed a place to hide. All because of Paul. I got my chance to get back at him. He's going to protect me, and I'm going to blackmail him if he doesn't. Then at some point, he has a child. This guy's changed. This guy's changed. Even back then, good-looking guy. Had a little moment where I kind of like what he was doing. Here, he's still a damn good-looking guy. But he's a man now. And he's a husband. He's got a new child. And now he wants redemption. Now he wants to tell me sorry, because he's changed a lot. Eat that cake. He's doing it. That's how much he wants this forgiveness. He's showing me that that wasn't just words, that he's willing to do anything. I'm in love with this guy. Interesting. Interesting. Very interesting. Definitely a gap that was in the original series that is finally kind of filled in. And it's funny because it's not something that I was looking for, nothing that I was actively confused by. Because again, I drew my own conclusions, but it's cool to get that little gap kind of filled in. I'm going to stick with my canon that she was in love with Zenith more. Everybody loves Zenith. Short story, Roxy shows her gratitude. Roxy chapter, Roxy's in the chat, Roxy's in the chat, Roxy's in the chat. Roxy McGurdia had a dilemma. Just the other day, she had received a thank you gift from Rudius and Sylphie after their wedding. But was it okay to just accept such things? When you received a present, wasn't it common courtesy to give something in return? Having come to this conclusion, she was out looking for something, but she wasn't sure what they would like. Sylphie's present was giving her particular trouble. They had lived together in the past, so Roxy knew her taste. She preferred simple to showy, practical to stylish. That made a household item or clothing, something a little on the expensive side, her prime candidates. And yet, as Roxy spent 3 hours wandering around in circles in the market, nothing seemed quite right. But the longer you searched, the more opportunities would present themselves. As soon as she saw the street stall, Roxy knew she had found what she was looking for. It was a pair of white leather boots lined with fur. They looked incredibly warm. Boots like those would be perfect in the cold Shiraya winters, and the white leather would look wonderful on Sylphie, with her pale skin and white hair. Also, Sylphie had been saying lately that her feet were cold. These really were perfect. Roxy hurried over the stall. It's so funny to see how much effort she's putting into this versus somebody else. Like, Rudy was like, a hat. She needs a hoodoo hat, right? Her hat's really old. Let's get her another hat. How much effort she puts to in this whole thing. It's crazy. One pair of these, mister. Well, you got good taste. Water bounces right off them and won't slip. And they're toasty warm to boot. Only they're made of special material, so that'll cost you 5 silver. I'll take 'em. That was the conversation that unfolded before Roxy's eyes. A female adventurer had bought the boots right out from underneath her nose, disappearing into the crowd, exclaiming, "Man, what a great find!" Missing out on the item by a hair. It happened all the time. But Roxy picked herself up and went to the stallkeeper. Those boots just now. Do you have more in stock? No, those are the last ones, I'm afraid. A one-of-a-kind item that happened all the time, too. All right. Who supplied them to you? Well, I made them myself. I collect materials wherever my travels take me. They make them into the goods that fit the place I sell them in. It's a kind of apprenticeship, you see. Roxy looked at the wares and saw they were indeed inspired creations that looked ready to be the next big thing. Is that right? I'd never peg you as an apprentice. You're very skilled. I'm very happy to hear that. What do you say, little miss? If there's anything here that makes your fancy, you're welcome to try it on. I'm much too old to be getting called little miss. Every chapter has to have a jab like that. But leaving that aside, today I'm looking for a gift. You know their size? Of course. Now please, I have faith in your skills. So won't you make another pair of those boots for me? She could have just shrugged and bought something else instead of going through all the trouble. But the biggest fish is always the one you fail to catch. Roxy was convinced beyond a doubt that the boots from before were better than anything before her. I'd be happy to make them, only I'm all out of materials. What material is that? Yeti leather. Interesting. I don't think they've ever mentioned Yetis in this series yet. I'm probably forgetting, but I think this is like the first time a Yeti has been brought up. Yetis. Roxy knew the monster well. They were a D-rank monster that lived in the Great Glacial Valley of northern Shiraya. If you went to the glacier, you'd find a good number of them shuffling about. You did not, however, often find their hides for sale. This was because the Great Glacier Valley had nothing that people needed, and as such, people didn't intend to go there. You only saw Yeti leather when a lone Yeti showed up after being driven out by the others, or when the types who accompanied foreign kings to the Great Glacier on sightseeing trips brought some back to add to their stock. If people knew the leather could transform into such beautiful boots, they would surely value it differently. But as things were, Roxy tried to work out what to do. There, in front of the stall, she worried, then worried some more, until... It was early next morning, and Rudius was wandering around the entranceway to the house. The previous day, Roxy had gone out and not come back. Rudius's mind was full of worst-case scenarios. What if she'd been abducted? What if she had been in an accident? Or perhaps she'd gotten sick of him and wanted a divorce? With such things whirling around his head, in the end, he hadn't slept a wink. Then why the hell aren't you out looking? What if something happened? Hopefully she'll just show back up here. If I just wait, she'll just show back up. I really am worried, though, Sylphie said. She's not the type to stay out late at night and not tell anyone. She was concerned for Roxy, too. She stood with Rudius at the front door, staring out the window. Oh. As they did so, they heard the clip-clop of a horse's hooves approaching. Rudius and Sylphie strained their eyes to see what was going on and saw a beautiful horse, the one Rudius had named Matsukaze, coming towards the front door. Mounted on his back was a girl in shining blue hair. It was Roxy. For some reason, she was all beaten up. She jumped down from the horse, then bobbed her head at Rudius and Sylphie, who came out the front door. I have returned. Are you alright? Did you get into trouble? I meant to get this done yesterday, but it ended up taking a really long time. Here, these are for you. From the bag on her back, Roxy produced a box, to which she held out to Sylphie. Sylphie opened it up with an air of trepidation. She cried out in delight. Oh, what gorgeous boots! Thank you. But what's the occasion? I thank you for the present you gave me the other day. These took a bit to get a hold of. In one day, she had galloped to the Great Glacier, hunted down an unlucky Yeti. I look at it, it says, unlucky. This Yeti's just chilling over there with all of his boys, and then suddenly out of nowhere, Roxy shows up. I need some boots. I need some boots, die. Then rushed back as fast as she could. Had the stall keeper stay up all night to finish them. The grueling pace had been enough to leave even the well-traveled Roxy unsteady at her feet. Huh, well, I'd like to know what happened, and I was worried, but thank you, I love them. Sylphie gave her a shy smile. I am truly sorry I made you worry, Roxy said, But when she saw how happy Sylphie was with her present, her face lit up into a satisfied grin. Then Rudius said, "What about me?" Roxy looked at him for a few seconds. She didn't move. Then she said, "Oh." After that, Rudius fell into a crushing depression. And so Roxy tried all sorts of things to cheer him up. But that was a story for another time. Okay, that's goofy. That was super goofy. I wasn't really expecting that. I mean, it plays similar to the whole situation with like Cliff and Elise, where it's like you build into something like crazy and then you go, oh yeah, by the way, there was a thing that was established at the beginning of this chapter. It's that whole joke. It's still cute. It's still cute. And again, Roxy showing that she's best girl, that she go through all that trouble for them. Roxy looking out for people. Like it again, it's like the last chapter. Sylphie and Roxy, the wives. Forget about, oh yeah, there's Rudius over here too. Oh yeah, there's Rudius over here too. Because I think they even implied that with the actual gift, because it wasn't Sylphie that brought it to Roxy. Like, again, it's like, it's just Rudius over here like a third wheel. Sylphie brings Roxy the hat, and so Roxy goes through like a whole bunch of trouble. But yeah, it kind of shows like how much effort she put into that. It was cute. It's cute. It's cute. And again, a lot of it has to do with, I think at the time, there was a semblance of Roxy almost feeling that she is in a place that she shouldn't be. But again, I think because of the gift that they give her, it really did show Roxy, you're welcome here. You are. Because again, she didn't even want to get married until after the birth. It really did feel like when Roxy was brought into that family, she almost felt like she shouldn't be there. I really shouldn't be here. I shouldn't be here. And I think, again, that gift that they gave her, that hat, was welcome home, Roxy. Welcome home. This is your home. You are a wife of this house. So I can see her going through a lot of trouble to try to find something perfect. Short story, Bird Brain Atoffe. Okay, I'll start saying Atoffe. I'm going to probably still say Atoff. I'm going to start saying Atoffe. I'm going to try to say Atoffe. It sounds like Kafoffe. Yeah. In the castle of Black Iron that stood at the center of the town of Rikarisu in the Bagoa region of the Demon Continent, a demon king was raging. Blue-black skin, white hair, red eyes, bat-like wings, and horns. You guessed it. It was Atoffe Ratoffe Ryback. Badagoose! Damn you! You dare break your alliance with Carl! Bang, clash. Atoffe rampaged around, destroying everything in her vicinity. Her personal guard stood by in the same vicinity, ducking their heads whenever something came flying by. Just incoming projectiles would have been alright, but if he got in the way of Atoffe's swinging fist, there'd be no avoiding a fatal wound. It wasn't that they were afraid to die. Atoffe's personal guard did not fear death. All the same, Atoffe was scary.
Strictly speaking, he did not break the alliance.
Only one person was unfazed. Moore, Atoffe's advisor and captain of the personal guard. The reason for this was partly that he was also of immortal demon stock, so a punch wouldn't kill him, but primarily because he was a long acquaintance of Atoffe that allowed him to stay calm.
The Alliance only forbade you from killing each other, and you're still alive, Lady Atoffe. If Pedagoose had wished it, as soon as—
Shut up! Moore went flying into the wall. With a loud clang, his helmet fell to the floor. It bore a horrible dent. Atoffe had punched him.
I know that.
My apologies, my lady.
Moore got back on his feet straight away, then bowed. This was business as usual for him. He's used to the boss beating him around. Grr! Atoffe paced around the room, growling like a wild animal. Her anger wouldn't subside. If it had been defeat in a head-to-head battle, that wouldn't have made her rage like this. She'd have readily bowed to her opponent, handed over her treasure, and become their servant. But here, she had been defeated by the unexpected interference by despicable Pedagoose. Reinforcements, as far as Atoffe was concerned, were permissible, but not from Pedagoose. She wouldn't allow reinforcement from him. This was because she really didn't like him. Atoffe circled around the room 3 times, then stopped short.
I haven't made an alliance with him.
Atoffe, in her own stupid way, sometimes had brainwaves. For example, the fact that there was no rule saying she couldn't kill Rudius and the others, or vice versa.
Lady Atoffe, surely you don't need to trouble yourself with riffraff like that.
No, I don't. I won't let them get away with this. Not after they teamed up with Pedagoose to catch me in a trap.
Atoffe pointed at Moore, then screeched.
Adol!
Very good, my lady.
Hunt them down.
I will put together a search party.
Moore said, promptly agreeing. As for the rest of the guards, they looked none too happy. For their part, they were against the search. Rudius and the others had used teleportation circles to disappear off to who knows where.
Searching high and low for someone when you had no idea where in the world they were or how to find them would be nothing more than a wild goose chase. On top of that, almost all of Etofe's personal guard were swordsmen with no connections. They didn't know a thing about searching for people. They might spend a lifetime searching and never find the target. They weren't immortal demons. They had expiration dates.
Right then, get going. While you're gone, I shall train a special technique to use against the spell he casts. Yes, Lady Etof.
Despite all that, none of them raised any objections. That was because Etofe's personal guard followed her orders without question. Well, that was part of it. But there was actually one more reason. This actually implies the idea that she came back together pretty quickly. I thought that Petagoose did a lot more damage to her, and it was going to take her longer to get back together. 3 days passed.
Lady Etof.
More had come to the mountain where Etof was.
What?
In front of her lay sprawled out an enormous dragon. Its hide was malted in green and yellow, but blood trickled from its mouth, and it wasn't breathing. To train herself, Etof was hunting thunder dragons, which could control lightning. Thanks to this, she now had a surefire counter for lightning magic.
I have put together a search party. They are ready to depart at any time.
At this, Etof turned around slowly. Then, she looked directly into Moore's eyes, cocked her blood-splattered head to one side, and said,
"What are you talking about?"
Knew that was coming. Knew that was coming. Knew that was coming. This happened a lot. Etofe would get angry, order them to search for something, then totally forget about it. Couldn't forget about what Kishirika did to her, though. I think it implied the idea that she got it, like, completely wrong or something like that, but she didn't forget that she hated Kishirika. Of course, it only slipped her mind, so the moment that someone said the name, or she saw the person's face, she remembered it straight away. So, she could remember, but...
Nothing, my lady.
It would have been one thing if there was a war, but wasting Etof's personal guard on something like this didn't align with her goals of building up her own forces in preparation for the great battle to come.
Forget that, Moore. Listen to this. I have at last devised a way to deal with lightning wielded by thunder dragons. With this special technique, lightning shall hold no fear for me.
Remarkable as ever, Lady Etof.
Only, why was I trying to learn a special technique to use against lightning? As I recall, my lady, being a demon king, was prepared for the coming of a champion. Was that it? Of course it was.
Listening to Etof cackle, Moore looked up at the sky and murmured,
"Another quiet day."
That's stupid. 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 I love Etof, though, so it's good. It's a stupid chapter, but it's Etof, so I love it. I love Etofe. 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 I'm sorry, Etofe. I'm never gonna not say Etof. I guess by that count, I have to say Baku. It's Etofe Raibaku. I have to say it fully Japanese, Raibaku. Short story, a nightmare. This was like a kind of dark one. This was a very dark one, if I remember correctly. Stop it. Stop it, please. I'm begging you, stop. It was an awful sight. Sylphie sat slumped against a tree. A red stain covered her chest. As a healing magician, she had taken the first hit. Everyone had tried to protect her, but the attacks had come one after another with unerring accuracy until, eventually, one found her, throwing against the tree trunk, where she slid down to her current position. She had twitched for a while, but now she wasn't moving at all. She was paler than she ever had been, and the blood trickling from her mouth had dried up. The flow of blood from her chest had stopped too. She was dead. Roxy laid on the ground, her arm stretched towards Sylphie. One of her trademark twin braids lay on the ground beside her. The other was probably still attached to her head. But where her head was, Reese couldn't see it anywhere. Her headless body would never move again. After losing the other two, Edis still held on. But with every 2 or 3 exchanges of blows, she had taken more damage until, eventually, she was hit by a mortal blow. She was at death's door, but even now, she tried to fight back, roaring like a lion. But the next hit took her arm off. The next opened a gaping hole in her stomach. She fell to her knees. She looked back at Rudius, eyes empty, saying something, but he couldn't hear it. "Please, spare us. I'll do anything. Just please, have mercy. Please, please." His beggings fell on deaf ears. Before he knew it, the scene had changed, and he was looking at his house. Everyone was dead. Lilia, Aisha, Norn, Zenith. And there, with a face like a demon, Orsted held Lucy up by her head. Rudius couldn't make words. He had to say something, but he didn't know what. Even if he begged him to stop, Orsted would not listen to him. He knew that, but he couldn't think of anything else. "Please, please, don't destroy the world. You can kill me. Just don't take my children. Don't take their future. Please, I never felt that sort of happiness before. Please, forget about the man god. Please."
The reply was the same that Rudius had heard before.
I cannot.
He crushed Lucy's head in his fist. Ah! Rudius slipped up, his breath coming in short gasps as he cast his eyes around. He was standing on the top of his bed at home. Apparently he had woke up so violently that he actually stood up. He looked outside. Sunlight poured too bright to be morning. It was maybe a bit before noon. Even though it wasn't really morning, he could hear tweeting of birds. It was peaceful. Yeah, I was kind of curious what direction that was going when I first started kind of going through this. Was that this was going to be... I was assuming it was going to be a dream. I mean, it says literally a nightmare at the top. But I mean, the question was going to be really what he was having a nightmare for. I wasn't really kind of assuming it would be... It's really kind of a what-if scenario if Orsted didn't spare him. And I think it kind of alludes to that at the very end. You know, thank you, Orsted, for saving me. It's literally, he could have chosen to do this. This could have been literally how everything ended. Because yes, there was a truth to the idea that it wouldn't just be Rudius. The man god would have wanted the children dead too, and he could have possibly figured out some way to get Orsted to go after them as well. Probably not. Probably more so that he'd probably have somebody else kill the children, honestly. It'd be a lot easier for the man god to get somebody else to kill Lucy and whatnot. But yeah, I do acknowledge that even in that situation where he didn't spare Rudius, he probably still would have left the others alive. Because again, he doesn't want to rock the boat too much. If Roxy or Edis or Sylphie has to do something in the future, he's not going to want them dead. That's just like the whole situation with him first running into Orsted. Orsted didn't want to kill Edis or Rajerd. He knew they were going to be useful for something later on. But yeah, pretty graphic little set there. Again, going back to what I was saying earlier, it's the wives. Well, what was Roxy doing when that whole situation? She was reaching out to Sylphie, going to help out Sylphie before she ends up dead. He took some deep breaths and looked at his hands. He had lost his left, but it was definitely there now. That was the hand that Orsted had regrown for him. Around it was a bracelet that he wasn't used to seeing yet. That, too, Orsted had given him. It was a dream. After everything that had happened the day before, one thing had led to another. He yielded to Orsted. Neither Sylphie, nor Roxy, nor Edis were dead, and he hadn't attacked the rest of his family either. Still, he wondered if that was true. Yeah, a little bit of disbelief. If this dream happens right after the actual occurrence, it'd be hard to believe. Huh? Big brother? Are you awake? You okay? You were yelling like crazy. Aisha poked her head into the door. Reese beckoned her to come over. What's up? Still standing on the bed, he stroked her head. Aisha seemed to enjoy it. Apparently, she was a real thing. What do you think? Easy to stroke, isn't it? Yep. Oh, a split in. No, what? No way. Aisha pulled away, then began to check her hair in a nearby mirror. Just kidding. Aisha turned back at him, sulkily, folding her arms and with a huff. Hey, big brother, I'm happy they're giving me attention at all, but you should pay attention to someone else first. He followed Aisha's gaze. There at his feet, he saw a woman lying prostrate around the head of the bed. A glance of her white hair and long ears told him it was Sylphie. She stayed up all last night to take care of you, you know. Aisha said that before leaving the room. Rui sat down on the bed. Yesterday, he had come home after the fight with Orsted, then fainted. Sylphie had stayed up with him all that time, feeling a great rush of love for her. He put his hand on her head and stroked her hair gently as to not wake her. She breathed softly, sound asleep. At that moment, he wanted to pull her out of bed and share the joys of life with her. But he restrained himself. She let out a groan. Rudius looked closely at her, frowning. Was she having a nightmare? No. As soon as he thought that, she woke with a start, her shoulders heaving. She stared wide-eyed at Rudius. After a moment, she reached out and patted his face. Then his shoulders, chest, stomach. She let out a sigh of relief. He could more or less guess the sort of dream that she had. Morning, Sylphie. Harder than it was in the dream, right? Morning, Rudy. Yeah. Unlike the dream, you have a head. Sylphie, her eyes blurry with sleep, chuckled too. Her quiet laughter, free from pain or strife, filled the bedroom. Feeling at ease, he silently thanked Orsted for rescuing them. Sylphie had the same dream. Bad things happened. Again, after a traumatic experience like that, can totally see it. In all cases where something kind of really bad happened in a moment in my life, yeah, it feels you. And I think it's because your brain's thinking about the what ifs. Probably dreams fueled by just looping what ifs in your head. What if this happened? What if this happened? Did this really happen? Did I make it through that kind of situation? That kind of stuff. The doubts in your mind kind of fuels it. Short story, Nanahoshi's public apology. This one was like, this was such a like, I wanted this, but I was given this, which kind of sucks because I wanted this, but I'll take this. When I first started reading this, the beginning segment felt like possibly it could have been the moment that she first arrived in this world. I wanted that story, and I almost thought it was going to be that story. I'm like, oh, nice. We finally get to find out when they first met and like they're journeying around and stuff like that. That would have been super cool. It needs its own volume, though. A whole volume of the journey of Nanahoshi and Orsted would be super cool. It's going to the Begric continent, all that kind of stuff. Anyways, Nanahoshi sat still as a stone, stopped abruptly in the process of raising a cup of tea to her lips, utterly motionless. She looked for all the world like she met Medusa's gaze, but from the way that her hair moved in the breeze, it was very clear that she hadn't turned to stone. But there was someone glaring at her. This person wore a white robe and had gleaming silver hair. Those Sanpaku eyes, which set all who gazed upon them trembling, were a reptilian gold. If Rudius had been here, he might have tried to sound clever by saying, "It'd be no exaggeration to call you Medusa." But of course, this was no such mystical creature. It was Orsted. Orsted, who might be considered even more terrifying than any mythical creature, had appeared soundlessly as Nanahoshi drank her tea, and sat down opposite to her, just as soundlessly. Nanahoshi had totally freaked out and frozen up like a deer in headlights. The reason for this was that Nanahoshi, in collaboration with Rudius, had sold information on Orsted. Again, I still think is one of the biggest massive L moments of Rudius' entire story. I still, to this day, hate that he did this. And when I seen the scene in the trailer, I hate it there too. I'm like, there's the moment Rudius effed up. I hate it. I hate it. Because again, for this moment right here, Orsted could have totally came in there and killed Nanahoshi. Seeing that she bent to somebody working for the man god, he could have totally done that. After many twists and turns, Rudius, defeated, had yielded to Orsted. But that wasn't going to get Nanahoshi off the hook. A scene from a gangster movie she had seen long ago flashed through Nanahoshi's mind. She couldn't remember the plot with any accuracy, but in one part, one of the characters sold out the gang's boss to a rival gang and then skipped off to a foreign country. Through a stroke of luck, the boss survived, and the incident resulted in the gang rising in the world. But the gang leader hadn't forgot about the man that had sold out his boss. In order to take care of matters, they began tracking his movements. The man caught wind of this and ran, but the gang pursued him no matter where he went until, at last, somewhere in the depths of the Canadian mountains, they caught up with him. The gang leader sat down across from the terrified man and unhurriedly drank his hot coffee. They didn't say anything that could be called a conversation. The man who turned traitor just babbled a stream of excuses and plead for mercy. Then, when he finished his coffee, the gang leader took out a gun and shot the man dead without a word. That scene had left such a striking impression upon young Nanahoshi that it ended up being the only part of the movie that stuck in her memory. It had taught her the lesson that this is what happened to you when you lied to someone and sold them out. And so, with Orsted sitting across from her, Nanahoshi was totally freaking out. Again, that's what you get for helping Rudius, Nanahoshi. But again, I acknowledge, technically saved her life. Orsted regarded her steadily. His expression was blank. Because his resting face was terrifying, he looked like he was angry. Nanahoshi had known him the longest of anyone she'd met since coming to this world, so she knew that wasn't necessarily the case. But she couldn't rule it out either. If it had been Rudius, Nanahoshi wouldn't have been so scared. For all his talk, Rudius was soft. He might get angry and scold her, but the idea of him killing her was laughable, though it might depend on what she had messed up. So long as she begged as hard as she could for her life, she would surely escape death. Beg for her life. As she arrived at those words, movement returned to Nanahoshi's petrified body at last. She returned her tea, now welled and truly cold, to its saucer, then let out a breath. She knew what she had to do. She had to apologize. First, she would offer a sincere and genuine apology. Then, if he still didn't forgive her, she would beg for her life. For the traitor in the gangster movie, his prodigious begging had earned him a truly miserable death. No, that wasn't right. It was only because he couldn't have escaped that miserable death that he had been begging so pathetically. He had cast aside all of his pride and dignity, looking only for salvation, but lacking anything which would buy it, laying his feelings bare as he asked that only he spare his life. Nanahoshi doubted that she was capable of that, but from what she'd heard, that was how Rudius had begged Orsted, and Orsted had forgiven him. So she learned about what happened there. She had already learned what happened at that point. Well, all you have to do is just chomp down his foot and beg for him to spare your family. That being the case, she decided that she had better do the same. This wasn't about what she could or couldn't do. It was about what she was willing to do. With that in mind, Nanahoshi snuck a look at Orsted. He was still glowering at her. It was a way that he didn't say anything that was really scary. I'm sorry. She couldn't look directly at him, so she said it with her eyes turned down. I sold you out to Rudius. She felt like a cat wearing a pet-shaming place card. She questioned whether there was something else she ought to say. But given that she had no idea how Orsted would react, she couldn't find the right words. Nanahoshi knew that Orsted showed unexpected kindness towards those who came to him themselves. I'm wondering if they've ever implied that before. I know it's not a really big thing there, but overcoming that curse, I think, is going to be a lot more accepting to him. I guess the idea there is not sending somebody else to go after him, but rather confronting him themselves. And I guess you could see that in the idea that he's been confronted by many people. I mean, like the Galfalion or something like that. Somebody coming before him and challenging him and him sparing them. Again, it's more that we know because he knows they're going to be doing something for him in the future or something for the timeline that he needs, but still. It's an interesting thought. Making an enemy of him, however, and he was merciless. Everyone who had done so in the past, he had co-signed to oblivion in a single blow. Nanahoshi had seen it many times. Yeah, if you're not needed, though, that's a different question. If you're, again, working for the man god, gone. At first, she had been filled with terror by Orsted, who had no qualms about killing people, but she's slowly grown used to it until she stopped minding it at all. Interesting. Again, this is the kind of stuff that I kind of wanted from a possible Nanahoshi Orsted chapter, is to see this mindset. Because, yeah, that's the massive question mark. Again, when she first arrived, and he came before her, how'd they form a communication until she was able to actually learn the language that they could actually speak to each other? And yes, he's going to be going around fighting people. He's looking for targets and moving pieces and whatnot. What does she think about that? Seeing him kill somebody for the first time. Again, a Japanese schoolgirl. Pop into this other world. Going around with this guy that everybody's terrified of, and he's just slaughtering people with a single blow. He's going around making donuts. What does she think about that? That would have been very interesting to kind of see. I guess it's given us a little bit here. Of course, that had been as long as she wasn't the target of his wrath. Now, unable to guess when the strike would come at her, too fast for the eye to see, she was beside herself with terror. If she had known this was going to happen, she would put a phone book or something over her chest. I don't think that's going to stop it, girl. I'm sorry, girl. I don't think that's going to stop it. You got like a bullet or something like that, maybe. But this world didn't have phone books. And besides, Nanahoshi wasn't well endowed enough to hide a phone book.
Nanahoshi.
At the sound of her name, Nanahoshi raised the spoon she hadn't realized she had been fidgeting with to guard her chest. But Orsted didn't. Orsted's strike didn't come. Anything you have at you. Is that reflectiveness, is grab anything and guard.
That remote's not gonna help you. That tissue paper was not gonna guard my strike. Put down the chair.
But Orsted's strike didn't come.
Don't let it concern you. I am always making enemies.
It was slight. So slight that unless you knew him well, you wouldn't have caught it. The corners of Orsted's mouth twisted in a tiny smile. It carried a hint of self-deprecation. Nanahoshi's chest grew tight at the sight of it. Oh, who was it that helped her ever since she had come to this world? Who was it that assisted her in searching for a way home? She hadn't forgotten. No, your curse doesn't affect me. I owe you my life, though so does Rudius. But that's to say, I swear, I didn't betray you because I hated you or because I was afraid of you. She couldn't find the right words, even though she had carefully selected what she would say here. After thinking it through over and over again, her words came out in a jumbled stream. That's sad. Again, I hate Rudius for this. I absolutely hate Rudius for this entire thing to happen. Again, what I was frustrated with back then was that he literally protected her. This schoolgirl from Japan thrown into a world of death with no OP abilities like Rudy has. And again, the world itself is literally killing her. That's why she had to get the tea. He took her in, literally confronted her the moment she arrived there, and put that cloak over her back, covered her up, shielded her, protected her, and yes, helped her try to find a way home. She hadn't forgotten that. Here, he says, don't let it concern you. I'm always making enemies. I'm used to it. There's a side of me that thinks this is not about Rudius. None of this has to do with Rudius. None of this has to do with Rudius attacking him. Nothing about Nanahoshi helping Rudius with a tool to lure him out there to possibly die. Don't let it concern you. I am always making enemies. It was slight, so slight unless you knew him well, you wouldn't have caught it. The corners of Orsted's mouth twisted into a tiny smile. It carried a hint of self-deprecation. Her chest grew tight. Don't worry. You wouldn't be the first one. That's what I get from that. Don't worry, Nanahoshi. You wouldn't be the first. I'm used to it. The guy, again, who has been protecting her this entire time and helping her get home that she's craving to get back home to, showed her all these contacts, helped her with communicating to people and finding people, and probably taught her the language in some way. I betrayed him. And now he's sitting here going, don't worry. You wouldn't be the first. That's what's gut punching her. No, it's not the curse. I'm not like the other ones that you're talking about. No, I owe you. Though, also with Rudius. I think that's kind of translated wrong there. I'm thinking she's probably saying, I also owe Rudius my life. I swear I didn't betray you because I hated you or because I was afraid of you. No, it's not what you think it is. What a gut punch. Again, I hate Rudius for this. I hate Rudius so much for this. So freaking much for this. Going back to what I said earlier, I don't think it's because Rudius told him, don't be angry at her. Please don't kill her because I did that. She did it for me. She's not at fault. I think Orsted was already going to spare her. Again, he has no reason to be angry at her. He's used to this. Huh? Another one. It's all right. Ugh, it sucks. It sucks so much, dude.
That's enough, Nanahoshi.
Nanahoshi shut up. Neither Orsted's expression nor his tone gave any hint to what that's enough meant. He might mean it didn't matter to him anymore, but it could also mean,
I shall return to check on you soon, Nanahoshi. Understood.
These last words gave her the answer. She had, it seemed, been forgiven. Of course, she nodded. Orsted stood up. Then again, without a sound, he left. It sucks. I'm actually getting emotional. I hate this so much, dude. I hate that. I hate it. I hate it. Again, because this is like, I love Orsted's character. I love Orsted so freaking much. And again, a lot of what gets me emotional about Orsted is the fact that this person's been stuck in this loop for so long that they don't really have a semblance of camaraderie or the idea of trusting other people. They've been betrayed so many times, gone through so many loops, dealt with death so many times, never making connections at some point, just never wanting to make connections. Does so much for her. And this. Nanahoshi watched him go. It was so good to apologize properly, she said, with a sigh of relief. Ugh. Ugh, again. I like that, though. What does that enough mean? Is he saying that's enough? I don't want to hear anymore. Stab, or is it that's enough? That's enough for me to be good? Yeah, that's all I need to hear. You're good. I hate it. Poor Orsted. Poor Orsted can't trust nobody. Orsted's got to deal with trust issues because of Rudius. Damn it. A good chapter. Good chapter. I'd like to see a little bit more of their relationship. Short story: The Imprisoned Prince. After trouble in the Oscar Kingdom had died down, Ariel gave Rudius an estate. She couched it by saying they could stay there whenever they had business in the kingdom, but it was twice the size of their house and came with a garden. On top of that, it was crawling with servants, so in all honesty, Rudius didn't feel comfortable. But, for the time being, he took advantage of the convenience as he dealt with the aftermath. On one such day, a servant he didn't recognize approached him. I beg your pardon, sir. A letter has arrived from you, from a personage of note. Of course, only a short time had passed since he began to stay at the estate, so maybe there was still some servant that he hadn't met yet. Either that, or they left such a little impression when they first introduced themselves. No sooner than he'd take the letter, the servant vanished like a ninja. So, they were intruder. If they had been an assassin just now, Rudius would have been in trouble, but he had missed his chance to sound the alarm. For the time being, he decided to see what the letter said. Yeah, that does kind of scare me, that somebody snuck up like that. Ninja? Got a ninja character? Loosely translated, it basically said that they wanted to speak face-to-face in room 403 at the palace the day after tomorrow. Room 403 was the room on the 3rd floor of the 4th tower from the east of the castle. The sender's name wasn't written, but the sealed wax was a mark of a crest of the royal family that made him think it was a summon from Ariel. However, if that were true, she would have sent Sylphie or Luke or another servant with a message, or she would come there herself. This really was suspicious. Maybe it was some sort of spam mail. If he went to the location as instructed, he might get locked up and asked to pay a hefty price. All the same, the letter intrigued him. Therefore, that night, he went to ask Orsted for advice. He couldn't help but wonder what Orsted would think of his new recruit showing up with spam mail asking what to do. But Orsted didn't look annoyed.
It's Grabble.
Ruius didn't need to bother Orsted. Grabble Zappin Asura was the first prince. He'd lost the struggle for the throne and had been imprisoned. If he responded to the summons of a guy like him, that might draw suspicion from Ariel. All the same, the fact was, Ruius was interested. The next day, Ruius told Ariel that Grabble had contacted him and decided to meet. Ariel raised an eyebrow, like she wanted to say something, but when he told her that he had Orsted's leave, she nodded politely and made no comment. She didn't have to look grave about it, but then he supposed that Ariel had to consider the possibility that Orsted might swap her out for Grabble. It was hard being in a weak position. I mean, at this point, with everything that happened here recently, I would assume that she's like, yeah, I'm the one that he wants. At the same time, yes, any wrong move, she can feel the sense that, yeah, he has the power to replace me, is really what it comes down to. Again, being in a weak position. You're a pawn. You're a pawn of this guy. And I think being in royalty, in her position, she's used to that. She's used to being a pawn, because she's been used to using pawn pieces for so long, and in some cases being used as a pawn.
You weren't surprised that was me that summoned you.
Grabble was just like the last time Ruius had seen him. A handsome, older dude in expensive-looking clothes. I knew after I looked into it. And here I thought I'd chosen people who wouldn't even crack under torture. Does being a magician of rare skill allow you to read the hearts of men as well? No, of course not. The room in which Grabble was informally imprisoned looked like any other noble's quarters. The furnishings were all top class, had servants and a maid. About the only thing that spoke of imprisonment was the guard at the door. But then, this was confinement for a member of the royal family. So, what did you want to see me for? It's nothing, really. I merely wanted a good look at the one who bested me. You know Queen Ariel is royalty, right? I'm pretty sure it's rude to stare at her. It would appear I have the misfortune to have been bested by a man with terrible sense of humor. You should stop looking at Ariel like that, dude. Idiot. Stupid joke. I kind of briefly considered why the heck is the guy immediately assuming Ruius did anything? Because again, if you think back on like what all transpired in that room, okay, think of Grabble, him specifically, what he witnessed. Again, he came in that room pretty late. He came in there after they had already pretty much, tore down Darius. Darius, my gosh, I can think of that guy's name. When Ariel was already winning that room, he finally stepped in and tried to smooth thing over. He acted like he just happened to walk in at that time. They kind of implied the idea that he was probably listening and going, okay, now I need to enter right now. What did he witness? He tried to kind of up things. Ariel stood her ground, and then she brought in Petagus. Petagus won everybody over. Ariel gained the favor of Petagus and strolled in with Petagus himself. Then Rita jumps in there, and then Orsted shows up and one-shots Rita. That was how this whole thing concluded. That was what won that. That's what Grabble's seen. Why is he going, oh, yeah, that guy that was over there that did literally almost nothing the entire time, he bested me. That guy over there, he bested me. Why would he think this? The only thing I could think of, and I don't remember if they even implied this, is that Darius told Grabble that Ruius was doing all this. Because Darius specifically this entire time, through the man god, would be watching for Ruius, specifically. So I'm guessing he told Grabble. Interesting. If not the case, then this is stupid that he's thinking that Ruius is somehow important. Because from Grabble's perspective, what? This boy? No, he didn't do much in that room. Ruius thought that had been quite a witty proposal. But then, as the first prince, he had been at the heart of the Asura Kingdom. He would have seen all sorts of gestures who put him to shame. I barely did anything. I suppose I created an opportunity for Queen Ariel, but she's the one who took it. Playing the sage, are we? But that is what I wish to ask you about. You will tell me about the course of your life thus far. First, he summoned Ruius here. Now he was ordering him to tell him about his life. He was royalty through and through. But that was fine. Ruius had walked into this. Long ago, in a village called Buena, in the Fatoa district, there lived a young couple named Paul and Zenith. They were going to be there for a while. So, it was a bad joke after all, eh? It hadn't been a long story after all. He maybe finished about 2 hours. I don't know about that. As if I asked about your opinion. But now I understand.
A faraway look came in Grabble's eyes. Soon, he would be sent off to the remote corner of the Oscar Kingdom, where he would spend his days in comfort, but without freedom. Though his life would be spared, he would be separated from his retainers and his children, and live out the rest of his life as a defeated man, without understanding how he'd gotten there. It would probably be unbearable. Interesting, because yes, one thing I thought they implied that he was going to be executed. I, for some reason, thought that he got executed. And it's really, it makes sense because, yes, even though she won the throne, it was a competition between the two of them to gain the throne. But in a lot of these situations, they don't want any chance of that ever being undone. Because by all accounts, the moment that he's out of the picture and she wins, he's going to figure out a way to get that throne back. You don't want competition. Hell no. That's why in a lot of cases, whenever you do have a sort of like a two-prince scenario, and one wins the throne, they want the other one dead. They don't want a chance that somebody else will put that person in their place. So I don't know, I got somewhere in my head that he'd gotten executed. But this makes sense. For the order of the kingdom, you technically don't want to just go off and kill the other princes, because there's still a chance that Ariel could die. Hopefully not by the hand of one of the other princes, but either way, they're going to want that person brought in to replace them. They did talk about the children, though, because one of them ended up going to the university. But that did stand out to me, though. So it was all a bad joke after all, and he had a faraway look in his eyes. It kind of makes me believe that there's an element here of him almost wanting some sort of answer from Rudius that would explain, or at least give him an excuse. I'm wondering if he was looking for an excuse from Rudius. Yeah, damn it. You didn't have like some magical win button. I screwed up. There's almost an element there where it almost feels like he may have been looking for an excuse, something to blame it on. But again, I would assume that blame would be in the idea that Ariel pulled off somehow gaining the favor of Petagus and this dragon god. Tell Ariel, pay heed to the conflict zone. She may maintain the balance or destroy it as she pleases. But if she missteps, she will set off quite the explosion. I wonder what that means. I'm guessing what he's probably implying there is be careful with that conflict zone, because similar to what we get into later on, if you try to step in there, like similar to the past, Millis and everybody else going to be mad at you. Don't try to overstep your bounds there. I see. In addition, she is not to offer welcome to the Knights Order of Millis. That lot are a pack of heartless demons. To rely on them is to lose one's soul. Even when not in war, she was not neglect the military. Another interesting note, kind of a little bit of a nudge to the whole situation that happened with the King Dragon Realm. He's kind of hitting a little bit about like what happened with the King Dragon Realm. I see. In addition, there's more? Reese spoke without thinking. Grabble looked taken aback for a moment, then snorted. No, that's all. Reese was sure there was no end to what he wanted to say, not to mention things he wanted to do after becoming king. From what Orst had said, even if this man became king, the Austrian kingdom would still be standing strong 80 years down the line. He would have been a great king. In the world where Ariel had lost, he would expand Austrian kingdom even further. You may go, sage. Thank you, your highness. Except, I'm only a sage after my wife, and I get intimate. Your jokes are awful. But I found our talk interesting. Yeah, my thanks. As Arus left, it struck him that becoming Orsted's servant, he had altered one part of history. Yeah, and again, this is sort of what I got a feeling of in this whole entire thing, was that it wasn't really making it out that Grabble was a bad person. It was Darius. But again, you make somebody else do your dirty work, your hands are still stained. It was an alright chapter. That was an alright chapter. Short story. What if it wasn't a mercenary band I came up with? This is a stupid chapter, but I want an illustration for this chapter. This is one of those chapters where I kind of hate there's no illustrations for this book. In this story, we find ourselves post Lilia landing herself in debt, becoming a gray rat maid, being horrible at it, and now Rudius having to find her another job. Right then, Rudius was lounging in a nap spot that came recommended by Lilia. Absorbed in his own thoughts, it was grassy, and the sunlight was warm. There were cats everywhere. He got a sense that he was cramping their style, but with Linia's coaxing, they resigned themselves to clear space for him. It was comfortable enough. Rudius spent the whole day trying to find a job he could entrust to Lilia, but he hadn't come up with any good ideas. Zenobia and Cliff both been non-starters. Ideally, it would be a job where, even if she couldn't pay off the whole debt of 1,500 gold at once, she could at least chip away at it little by little. But he didn't get the feeling that Lilia had that aptitude for the sort of steady work. He shot a glance at Lilia. She was talking to the cats, who had come to share her perfect patch of sunshine. nya nya nya. Among beast folk, and especially beast folk of Doldia name, people who could converse with dogs and cats were common. Apparently beast god tongue was easy for beasts to understand, but there weren't many races who could understand the language of beasts. It kind of makes you wonder if the world of beast folk, if possibly they had animals there, or if they were all animal people. Take Leo, for example. He could understand what Rudius said, but Rudius couldn't understand him. They couldn't have a conversation, though sometimes Rudius thought he understood him. Maybe there was something clever they could do with this to make money. A service to communicate pets' feelings to their owner. Love, discontent, the whole shebang. Bilingual. That wasn't a half-bad idea. Rudius wasn't sure about these parts, but in Ostra Kingdom, there was loads of nobles with pets. Hey, Lilia.
Yeah?
What's that cat there saying?
Nothing much. Just saying hello, yeah?
Huh. So, can you understand bugs and snakes too?
Don't be silly. All I can understand are things like dogs and cats, yeah?
That would make the service tricky. From what he heard, the Ostra Kingdom's long history meant that what he thought were strange pets were more common than cats and dogs. He had stories of people keeping centipedes as big as dogs. Unlike his previous life, in this world, there were no common assumptions that pets meant cats or dogs. I mean, I sort of got a feeling of that when Rudius was doing the whole, like, finding the pet thing in the Demon Continent. Because I remember correctly, they went into that whole, like, dog napper's den, and it was just a whole bunch of different animals in there. It was like, it wasn't just cats and dogs in there. Basically everything was what you called an exotic animal. If she could only understand a tiny handful of a wide range, it was likely the business wouldn't get off the ground.
Yeah, for yeah.
Lilia was on all fours as she chatted to the cats. Her butt was pointed at Rudius. Her fluffy tail twitched. It was so alluring, he wanted to grab her tail, but resisted. He quickly took the holy relic from his pocket and held it to his face to calm his mind. But the next moment, there was a big whoosh, and suddenly a gust of wind. It set his robes billowing, and it snatched the item from his hand. Crap! The freely white material flew into the air. It was precious. He couldn't lose it. He'd never get it back. Those thoughts flashed through his mind as he threw his arms out desperately. But it was too far away. In a blink of an eye, it was flown up so high in the sky. He had pushed his mana to his legs and was about to jump.
Yeah.
Lilia sprang into the air like a rocket, slicing through the wind and catching the holy relic before somersaulting 3 times and hitting the ground in a silent superhero landing.
Phew, that was close, yeah? Wait, are these panties? You, yeah? Oh, those, not yucky, yeah? No problem, yeah? Here, your holy item, yeah, here, yeah.
I like it.
You're great. Oh, here you go, yeah.
Don't call it yucky. Not yucky.
Not yucky, yeah.
She held out the holy relic. She was respectful, but she also held it with 2 fingertips, like she was trying to touch it with as little skin as possible. Rudius took it back and took a deep sniff. Clarity came over him. A job that combined the Doldia tribe's ability to converse with animals, Linia's physical capabilities, and her sexy butt. He had it. I like it after all that. Oh yeah, her butt. I got a great idea. Linia. He gripped her shoulders.
Yes, yeah?
Let's put together a circus troupe. And so, the Ruquag circus troupe was born. I think this is actually a better idea in the end. In the end, this has probably been a better route in the timeline.
Yeah.
Linia soared through the air before Rudius on trapeze. She wore a leather leotard and fishnet tights. In short, a bunny suit. Accompanying her, acrobats in clown costumes and trained magic beasts cavorted about.
Good. Another great success.
Standing next to Rudius in the same bunny suit as Linia was Aisha. Where is my illustration for this chapter? We have Linia and Aisha in bunny outfits. Where is the illustration? There's no illustration in this damn book. I feel cheated. She was counting silver coins, looking smug. It had been a year already since they formed it. Many beast folks were physically gifted, and at Linia's invitation, a whole lot of thugs changed careers to become acrobats. Because Linia could communicate to magical beasts to a degree, it wasn't too difficult to train them to perform tricks. When he appointed Aisha as advisor, she threw herself the task and realized his vision. A big tent full of acrobats and magical beasts, strong men, beautiful women, and ferocious, terrifying creatures, all coming together for a show of lights and shadow. In the Ostra Kingdom, their circus was a runaway success. After she became ringmaster, Linia paid off her debts just like that.
and Aisha was smiling again. It seemed like Aisha likes this more than Rue Quagmire Band. The circus also seemed a good way to find employees for the Orsted Corporation, and to sell reserved figurines, so Rudius was feeling smug too. After that, the circus made it big on the world stage. Lilia became one of the world's richest people before she let it get to her head, and ended up losing all of her money again. But that's a story for another time. You're going to actually do another story of that one? Doubt. That's actually a pretty goofy one. That's a goofy one. One more? We'll do one more. Short story, flattery and honesty. Randolph was loitering around the castle when he came across someone going through sword drills in the courtyard. It was Pax. He had a wooden sword in his hand, swinging it as he whirled around in circles. His movements were more rhythmical and dynamic than ever. He balanced on one leg, swung the sword one-handed, jumped into the air, turned to face backwards, and swapped the sword one hand to another. He disoriented his opponent, unleashing a rain of blows on imaginary enemies in front of him. Only his eyes were not on an imaginary enemy, but rather glancing off to one side. Randolph followed his gaze where a girl with long blue hair sat on the ground. Her eyes were vacant, but he could see that she was looking at Pax. When Pax noticed her gaze, his movements changed again, taking on the ferocity of a man fighting 2 or even 3 opponents.
Wow. Yeah. Wah.
His shouting grew more and more intense too. Benedict's expression did not change as she watched him. Or so your average observer might have thought. But over the past few months, Randolph had learned to pick up on subtle shifts in her expression. Yes, Randolph could see hope and yearning in her eyes, and Pax must have seen it too. Again, you're not gonna make me like him. You're not gonna make me like him. You're not gonna make me like him. He had to look dashing for her, so he was going through his sword drills with more enthusiasm than ever. Phew! After a while, Pax vanquished his enemy and came to a stop. Then he looked over at Benedict and made his eyes go wide, as though he'd only just realized that she was there. Oh, you happen to be here. Hello, Benedict. I wasn't trying to show off. This is a dork, dude. What a stupid dork. Not gonna make me like him.
Oh, if it isn't Benedict, how long have you... And Randolph?
Pax noticed Randolph at the same time. He stared as though a skeleton had burst out of the ground in front of him. He couldn't have noticed. Randolph had a habit of masking his footfalls as he walked. Good day to you, Lord Pax. Randolph said encouragingly, putting on the best smile he could. Training? Working hard? To a swordsman like Randolph, seeing a member of the royal family working hard on his sword drills was truly admirable. Water, my lord. Randolph took out a cup he had happened to have on him, filled it with water from his canteen, and held it out to Pax. For just a moment, Pax looked doubtful, but he accepted it and took a gulp. His shoulders shot up. Then he drowned the rest. Ice-cold water with a squeeze of citrus. That had to taste marvelous. Yeah, after working out like that, yeah. It's like lemonade when you're working outside and it's freaking hot as hell. And yet, for some reason, no one else drank it. Yeah, I'm assuming the hesitation there is just sort of like something ingrained in Pax is to hesitate with things like that. But again, it's Randolph. There's a sense of trust there already. I mean, again, the whole soup thing, he was already ready for death back there. He was already ready with death with Randolph before.
Say, Randolph.
Pax mopped his brow, then asked,
How did you like my sword dance just now?
Randolph glanced briefly at Benedict. He knew why Pax was asking. Simply incredible, my lord. Perhaps one day you shall be sword god or Narth god. It was, he thought, a perfect answer. Despite appearances, Randolph was accustomed to flattering royalty.
Don't be ridiculous.
However, Pax's response was not what he expected.
Even I know that it was no better than a child's fantasy of a sword dance. I have no sword master. Even in Sharon, I shirked my sword lessons. I don't want flattery. I want you to tell me what I'm doing wrong.
Oh, I see. Randolph was taken aback. Yeah, I think Benedict, sure, he would totally take some flattery, but yeah, I don't think he's going to want flattery from Randolph. When you say that, what are you scheming? Randolph contemplated Pax. Pax was built a little strangely, but he was in decent shape for royalty. Yeah, that's sort of the problem that they've kind of pointed out for Pax, was that his height. He's just a little chubby little short guy. He didn't quite have the build for it. He was in decent shape for royalty, and Randolph felt he was serious about studying the blade. He probably wanted Benedict to see his good side. Not just an act, but his real good side. No, he wanted to get strong. He wanted to change. Yeah, he was doing it for Benedict, for sure. But not to show to her. Yes, he's showing off in front of her, but he legitimately wants to get stronger for her. And so all Randolph could do was answer him, just as Pax had given him honest thoughts on his cooking. True. I'm not well versed in sword dances, but let's see. Standing on one leg and swinging a sword is harder than it looks, my lord. My suggestion is to keep both feet on the ground. Hold your sword in both hands and train until you can make strikes anywhere. High, middle, or low, from any stance. Randolph wondered if what he said was too much. Your shoulders, arms, and lower body are all untrained. You better get back to the basics. He was basically giving a big no to sword dancing. You're doing everything wrong. Both feet on the ground, and high, middle, and low. Yes, I see. Like this. You have too much weight on your front foot. You want to be able to pull back at any time, while also keeping your weight centered so that you can step forward any time. I think you should keep your sword close to your body.
Like this?
Yes, like that, my lord.
It feels like I'm cramped.
That's to be expected. You keep yourself coiled up, so you reach out front and back or to the side.
So, that's how you do it.
It was a bit unclear if Pax was convinced, but he made a few practice stabs with his sword from the cramped stance. Eventually, he let out a deep breath.
Randolph, I thank you for your service.
Not at all. I am happy to help.
I require a little more of your help.
My lord.
All this exercise has made me hungry. Fix me something to eat before the afternoon studies.
Of course, my lord. If you'll follow me. He's so happy. He's gonna eat my food again. He's so happy.
Good. Benedict, we're going.
With an unsettling smile, Randolph fled back so he eats my food. So I get my food. He's such a dork. Gosh dang, to think that Rudius could have had, like, the death god literally probably follow him home if he just said that food was good back there. He liked part of it. Remember, he liked part of it. He's like, it has potential. It's an insult to what he thought he wanted. This could have been you, Rudius. You could have had Randolph following you everywhere. With an unsettling smile, Randolph led Pax away. It was for all the world, like a summon down to hell. But Pax went along without a care. Only Benedict was following behind, so he went slowly. Not long after, Randolph began to give Pax advice on his sword practice. But that's a story for another time. That's a cute way to end it. Cute way. Most of these chapters this time, this Mushoku Monday, have been pretty cute. But yeah, cute little insight into their relationship. And I kind of assumed that was going to be the case. I kind of assumed that at some point, if Pax was training, he would have asked Randolph for advice. And again, I think a lot of that was because he wanted to improve himself. He wanted to get stronger. He legitimately wanted it. I mean, yes, again, he wanted to show off to Benedict, but it was for Benedict's sake that he wanted to get stronger. It just sucks that, yeah, in the end, it never really came to use. But seemingly something that Refugian was trying to point out here is that there's an element of regret. I never studied when I should have back then. And now he's kind of having to make up for lost time right here. That was his entire arc right here in this location, was regretting what he didn't do before and trying to get back up on his feet, trying to get back where he failed. Anyways, I'm going to call it there. Even though the next chapter's title is Norn's part-time job, I've been running long, and we still have another part to do. Pretty much enough for one more part, I think, next week, hopefully. Not too long. I think it'll be enough. Hopefully next week's not going to be too long. But yeah, we're going to call it there. Thank you guys so much for the premiere. Hope you guys enjoyed this Mushoku Monday, as always. Hope you guys in the chat, tell me in the chat, is good? Good Mushoku Monday? It would have been better if we had an illustration for Lilia to put on the screen there, and Aisha in the bunny outfits, but unfortunately, no Refugian. I guess it would have been Refugian's call. Shirotaka, damn it, Shirotaka, where's our bunny? My autofocus is off. Try this again. Damn it, focus. Shirotaka, damn it, Shirotaka, where's our bunny outfit, Aisha? Anyways. Hope you guys enjoyed this Mushoku Monday. Hopefully it was entertaining to you all. Had a lot of fun. But yeah, greatly appreciate you guys' support, your kind words, all that stuff. Helped me through this entire journey through Mushoku Tensei. Greatly appreciate you guys. And yes, like I said before, I'll say it over and over again. Greatly appreciate you guys support channel monetarily through Patreon, tips, links, super thanks, memberships, all that stuff. Thank you. But until next week, until what I'm assuming is the last Mushoku Monday for a journey of 2 lifetimes. I'll take care. Grabble Zaffin Asra. Grabble Zaffin. that the boots from me that the boots from before 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 that the boots from before. That was that day that day the gray house that day the gray house. Short story: The Reader and the Elven Warder. Geese couldn't see why these things should be Geese couldn't see why these things should be sold at such a high price. Geese couldn't see why these things should be sold at Geese couldn't see why these things should be so.